Jordan French, and welcome back, everyone, to Grit Daily Startup Show. Today we have aspects. Darryl Kelly is with us. We'll be talking neurodivergence. We'll be talking about nonlinear pathways. Darryl, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm really, really glad to be here. I've been listening to a few of the episodes, and I'm just so impressed with the people that you've had on the show so far and the conversations and, the little tangents that you find yourself in, you yourself and your guests, and there's a level of authenticity. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate all those adjectives. And tangents are also nonlinear. So, so we're already there. Because inquiring minds are going to ask, they're already thinking this, like, let's go through real quick what's on this back bookshelf, just so the distractions that might be there. I see some books, I see some maybe some toys from your youth. Unpack that for us. What's going on back there?
Well, what
Darryl?
stands out to you? What's the thing that you're like, I don't know about that thing?
I recognize the pilot of the future, but let's do something a little more interesting.
Uh-huh.
Over your right shoulder, a little
Uh-huh.
odd. Or,
I'm
or
gonna
more,
do. I'm gonna
yeah,
Vanna White it.
Yep.
Where am I going?
Just below that, there's a car. There's like a very large vehicle.
Oh my
What
gosh,
are we
I
looking at?
love Legos. I love Legos. It is. I believe in play. There's two here. I don't know if the audio is going to keep picking it up. There's two here, and then there's one on the ground. This guy that I built with the kids. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we have Lego Palooza. And once a quarter over the weekend, we each go to the Lego store and just get the biggest Lego there. And we watch 90s and 80s movies and listen to bad music and just have fun time together and marvel over the engineering that is Lego and also just playing. And so, it's here in the office. I'm in an office here right now with probably 30 other people, and it just sets the intention that we play. And play is a part of doing really hard things. And so when people see me on a call, literally opening and shutting the frunk, if you will, here, playing with some type of toy, it just helps set that intention that that's the expectation of how we get work done. Hard things can be fun.
Fair point that you make. And what I just got out of it, Darryl, is that we're all invited over to the Kellys to play with some Legos. That's what I got out of
Come
that
over.
part of that conversation. So you were opening and closing the engine, and we'll use it metaphorically. Now you piqued our curiosity that you said there's about 30 people or so in that office. What is just to unpack that for us, because some people here, because they're interested in aspect ASPECT, normal spelling of it. That's your.com. For those who are a little less initiated for like workplace tools, where does that fit in the suite?
Yeah. So there's two sides of it. There is an employee productivity side, and
Mhm.
then there is what's called a forecasting, scheduling, and adherence component of the technology. We're a 50-year-old company, 52-year-old company that has gone through everything. We have history. We have baggage. We've survived and thrived through various waves of innovation. We were the first to create a patent and a technology called automatic call distribution. So we've always been the company that's pursued innovation at scale and doing hard and complex things around leveraging data to inform insights and provide action. And so specifically what we do is our technology helps ensure that there is a smiling and engaged employee on the other side of the interaction when you call Delta or when you call Southwest or when you pick up the phone and call Sony or Lego. We do all of the scheduling components in that. And there's a humanity pursuit that we are really focusing on right now in terms of putting agency back in the hands of the employees. Right now, you can go on DoorDash, you can go on Uber, you can go on the variety of sites, and you really can choose your own destiny. You don't see that as much in the traditional, typical contact center space. And so that's what we're pursuing, is ensuring that we can give humanity to agents, employees, frontline employees with their own sense of agency, self-service, et cetera, while also improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the back-end operating systems. And of course, we're using machine learning to do this effectively. But underneath all of that, or I guess on top of all of that, is great packaging. You can see there's this sense of play. Our logo is a bright pink. That's a flag over there that I'm pointing at right now. It's called raspberry, and so I need to make sure I don't say pink because our design team will fire me. But it's a raspberry color, so you can see that there's this lightness. But we really care about the user experience and interface related to the technology that we build for agents, for admins, and the way that the data is visualized. It should be beautiful. It should be packaged in a way that feels like it's a craft, and that's what we believe in here. There's great function, and there's also great form. Those two things should intersect a lot more than they do in the typical SaaS and software world. There's products, tangible products that we feel all day, every day, and we have it. Like I just picked up that Lego. Why I love Lego so much is the design component of it. It's the way it feels in your hand, the engineering that goes behind it. I want to make sure that our audience and users have that same sense of joy and delight and intentionality in the way that they interact with our products. It's a
That's
short little, yeah. I don't
an
know, hopefully that
interesting
makes sense.
metaphor. Yeah, certainly for a service. But yeah, point number one, yeah, don't piss off the design team. Whatever the color they want to assign something, we'll run with it. Happy to run with it too. The second is the sort of the outset problem that you described. I mean, I can just see the wheels turning, and everyone listening,
Yeah.
it's and watching too is that is one hell of a pain point. We won't pick on Delta unless you want to, but customer service and sort of that intersection that you just described, where you guys seem to be operating, it's got to be up there among the most sort of complaint-filled, intersections, right, between where a company interfaces with its clients,
Yeah.
especially retail, which you describe here. 52 years in sort of tackling that solve problem. Just to kind of get into some of the granularity, though, that's your focus, right? That's where you guys are hyper focused, is improving that, and helping these enterprise level companies, um, get off the ground
Yeah.
at that interface. Is that right?
It is. To be transparent to you and everyone listening, because I think that that's important, is to have a level of transparency and integrity.
Right.
We've lost that over the years, right? As you scale, we serve some of the largest organizations on the planet. Some of our customers have 60 to 70,000 agents using our platform. And over the years, right, your risk profile, your innovation profile, the way that you look at disrupting, it constraints, it constricts on itself throughout changes that you've made for one customer. The product has less intrinsic value for the entire base.
Mhm.
And what we have leaned into over the past 2 years specifically is our return to innovation. We've made a lot of trade-offs and compromises for specific or individual customers that haven't
Mhm.
allowed us to have the latitude and the movement to accelerate into innovation. And that's the transition that we're in right now. And believe it or not, customers are responding to it extremely well. Because when you buy a SaaS product, you're buying the future of the product as well. You're hoping that the product that you just acquired this year is exponentially better 3 years from now, not just for you, but for every customer around you. Because when all customers are thriving, we're able to continue to maximize the investment that we're making into product. And so what you'll see as a big shift is, as you start to scale your organization, you naturally just invest less into R&D. Unless you have always been a product company, you've always been a product company. We started bolting on some service components of it. And so really what we're doing right now is returning to our core competency, which is innovation. And so big mandate for me is the last 2 years is investing over 25% back into R&D, where we've over invested into sales. And there's going to be a season where you're going to pull that investment back. You're going to allow revenue to flow through. You're going to allow the new segments of customers where you have to listen really well. But we need to see it as a living and breathing and more dynamic instead of fixed structure, especially as you're scaling from stage to stage to stage. And we're really excited about that. Specifically, we've been very penetrated into the very largest of the enterprises. Right now, we get the opportunity to go down market slightly, because what we're seeing in this down market space is it's a lot more direct to consumer. And it's a lot more digital first or hybrid versus just traditionally calling, right? A lot of the larger organizations that we serve, they're still about 70 to 80% voice, believe it or not. As much as we're seeing like the world's going digital, I mean, just ask yourself when you have the most complex problems, what are you doing? You're calling because you want to
Yeah,
engage with someone,
I
right? There's a
believe
sense of
that.
that.
People get
Yeah.
angry and they pick up the phone, Darryl. That's true. And I know you have more there, and I really I want to set aside because I think we'll develop the innovation conversation because there's so many good questions to ask you on that. But I want to check actually your underlying assumption because it is an assumption, and I think you share it because you articulated it. You mentioned that perhaps customer service is getting worse, but is that actually true? Like, does data support that, or is this our perception because of the just social media and sort of like the frequency and the ping, 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 ping of like, hey, this is a bad experience, and that so easily, people can share it. Is there some maybe underlying data that actually throws the other way? I'm really just curious, Darryl. You
It's getting
closer.
more complex. Because when you think about the way that you interact with a company, you're more fragmented than ever, right? You may start a journey online and you may go in branch, brick and mortar, traditional brick and mortar, then, step back in the online experience. And so I would say that it is becoming more complex because your identity, your life cycle with an organization is becoming more dynamic. And
Mm,
so what we're seeing right now is, especially at the largest of the organizations that serve customers right now, is there's this data siloing. And so when you pick up the phone, there's not a sense of continuity, conversational continuity, and fluency, meaning, hey, I was just on your website. You should know what I was having a challenge with. And so that's what we're seeing, and that's what the data continues to support is as us as individuals with the way that we have a relationship with brands continues to become more digitally intimate and omni-channel and multi-channel intimate, it creates a challenge within the contact center that's just ready and ripe to be solved. And our approach on solving that is making sure that we have the best skilled individuals on the other side, and that's the shift that we're making. Typically, when you look at scheduling, it's you just want a person there. You want a person to facilitate an interaction, right? A complaint, a password change, whatever, right? Whatever reactive challenge that customer is calling about or messaging about. And what we're trying to solve here is ensuring that this is an ongoing and continual relationship because the individual that you are engaging with is skilled with multiple intersections of their identity. So they're matched really well with the individual on the other side. So it feels more like that continuous conversation. So even if you're going through multiple databases and you're navigating multiple screens, the individual on the other side is one, skilled for it, and two, is just having a great conversation with you, like you and I are on the other end, where you're like, oh, this was great. Yeah, I had a complicated thing when I rolled into this conversation. And yeah, clearly, Darryl had to do some complex things in the back end. I didn't feel it. And I'm resolved after. And that's what we're in the environment that we're dealing with. And the data to support that is we're seeing first call resolution continue to step up, meaning the intent that you called about or the intent that you engaged with is not being solved on that first interaction or first call at the same frequency that they once were when it was a little bit more rudimentary and simple. Now that you have this complex environment, that's what we're seeing as a shift. And when you talk about waves of innovation, you have to pay attention to the macro and micro components that are both behavioral and myopic within the industry that you're in, and then be really good at triangulating and synthesizing that data to come up with a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, and then incremental improvement against that hypothesis. And I don't want to make this about aspect. That's just really great strategy. At the end of the day, it should be continuous, and there should be an ecosystem and an organizational structure that is incentivized and encouraged to collect that data, to be curious, and then creating those opportunities to synthesize that data, develop out a hypothesis, execute quickly on that hypothesis.
right, and your point's fair, right? Like some of this might be logic or like common sense that's applicable sort of at the genus level rather than species to any company. But what's a little bit novel here is it's so relatable, like what
Yeah.
you do. Everyone listening, watching, and whoever's next to him has a, like you described, pretty complex and yeah, non-linear. We can throw that adjective back in there. It's sort of customer journey. I'll point out, as is you're describing some of the innovative aspect, and I think I'm starting to see that full picture as you paint. We'll dive into that more, but I'm actually thinking of one specific anecdote, and it's a good example. I have something positive to say on this one. It's about Amex. They have at least very narrowly, I'll describe this, in their chat window. You don't ever lose anything. You don't have
Yeah.
to like start all over. If you disengage or Wi-Fi gets connected, you ship out to a different country, Darryl, you can literally scroll up and still see the last, whatever issue, right? Billing, dispute, like what have you, question, right up there. And the reps almost see, I would say, nearly seamlessly, like are kind of engaged and sort of see that before they re-engage with you, even if what you're bringing to them is a completely, sort of new issue. And I really like that. It feels like a conversation, just like the analogy you used earlier, like this one, right? I mean, wouldn't that be nice? Um, if every experience, was like that. And I think you're onto something, but just to really galvanize on like what the innovation is, right? Like what is innovation in this space? Um, is it somewhat mechanical, like conceptually mechanical like that, or do you have some wild surprises in store for us, Darryl, on like what's on the horizon, for that interface, and maybe what enterprise could benefit from, and maybe what customers will be elated to hear what you might have to say next.
Now, there's a lot in that question, and there's a lot that we're thinking about. I would say the most innovative thing that we are paying attention to from a purely aspect, but what I think that the millions and millions and millions of contact center agents need, as well as the hundreds of millions of customers that are interfacing with these contact center agents, is leveraging artificial intelligence and the data that we are acquiring about that conversation in a way that is bidirectionally mutually beneficial. Bidirectionally, meaning affective or emotional computing, where if that conversation is going a little bit sideways or a little bit, you're noticing that the rep is struggling, or that frontline agent is struggling with giving you the accurate answer, whatever that may be, providing data to them proactively, and that's good design from a strategy point of view in terms of infrastructure and systems implementation, because I know Amex pretty familiarly, and that interaction that you're having is not an easy one. There's multiple databases, multiple layers and systems, so that's just really good design behind that. What we're hoping to power and what we're pursuing is leveraging really good data to be proactive with that information to help impact the employee, thus impacting you on the other side of that. And I'll give you a tangible example. Let's just say I'm having a bad day. We are already listening to that call, right? Every single time you call, every single time you chat, it says, hey, this interaction may be recorded for quality and assurance purposes. Well, that quality and insurance purposes typically is a reactive type engagement with that employee. And what that looks like is over a few weeks or over a month, you're going to get some type of report that says, here's your performance as an employee. What we're powering and pursuing is leveraging real-time data, so that employee is not engaged reactively. So they can make corrections intraday or in real time. And if we're also noticing, based off of emotional computing, how we're leveraging the conversational data that we're interacting with and that we're in the middle of, we're going, hey, you know what, Darryl needs a break. Hey, Darryl, go for a walk, man. Like, it's okay. We've rerouted your calls, we've rerouted your interactions. Go for a walk and come back, and that's the kind of like thing that we can do that really helps impact the humanity. That then, as soon as I come back, I'm feeling much better when I end up on the other side. And when you think about when we were at our best as individuals, it's when we're not in that limbic system, when we're not fight, flight, or freeze, when we can make sense of the complicated data. That when you do reach out to me, I'm having a productive and proactive conversation with you, an effective conversation with you. That all starts with the behavioral components, and I think that's what we're pursuing: is how do we leverage data to increase behavioral output? And that's just one intersection, but that's the thing that I specifically am most passionate about here as the leader.
Yeah, powerful. It goes back to, though, also I think maybe a broader concept of agency. You touched on it a few points already. And I think one way to almost visualize it is this balance, right? One might ask the question, especially a listener, of, well, why is this why is the structure this way? Why is there sort of like top-down management, and you can't necessarily just regularly solve the issue in that first call? There's certainly balance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
frontline folks probably really do care, and they'd love to kind of like write checks, right? To like let problems go away, and that could get very expensive for business. It might actually make a lot of sense in a lot of cases, but I do think your approach, it seems like much more scientific, right? Get
Hmm.
into the sort of behavioral psychology of it. Maybe not just seeing everything as a one fits all size tool, where that tool might be, writing a check. The others might be just, sort of like punting the issue, which probably is really ill-advised as well, right? One thing's a hammer, one thing's maybe a sledgehammer, right? But not
Yeah.
everything needs to be a hammer type tool. There's so many other tools, I think, is what you're describing here, that are at disposal. It also sounds like it's the early innings, Darryl, then, of really innovating in this space, at that intersection, between, especially at the retail level, but on the other side being enterprise, to solve what are probably myriad customer service problems.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's always going to be the early innings because we adapt, we change. We're already talking about how AI is the new technological revolution, and so we as leaders need to be paying attention to that and making sense of ongoing data consistently because there's always something new. There may be a new social channel, and that social channel may turn into a conversational engagement channel from a support point of view. There's a new product that's launching, and you want to collect data on how that product is providing. It's all new. And if we can have that beginner's mindset or first principles mindset, I think that we would do better as technologists if we go, it's never done. It's just the next iteration. And we have to go back and listen really well and then be decisive with the decisions and and the way that we synthesize that information. Because, yeah, that's all there is. The world's going to continue to move, and it's moving at a much faster rate than ever, which means that we as leaders and technologists, ironically, we've got to do a lot more listening and paying attention observationally to the data that's out there so we can solve for it.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty exciting to hear, because again, like, we're all customers too. You are, and I think, all for the most part, I'll speak for at least myself and probably many, many tens of millions, if not a magnitude more. We'd all largely given up on very good customer service experience. Don't even get me started on utilities, those types of companies, and their lack of incentives, right? As monopolies, there might be some real, like, structural factors there why they might have not so great
Sure.
customer service, or just ring endlessly, especially in emergency settings. Um, but let's go more granular, though. With your own journey, we've talked about, and I think a great metaphor for something that you wanted to bring up, the sort of complexity of the customer experience journey, especially as it relates to problem solving, especially enterprise level. What your company does, but for your own journey, right? It hasn't been linear itself. One thing that I think the keen listener heard earlier is the company's 52 years old. Well, you know it doesn't take a necessarily the abacus or an actuarial table, Darryl, to figure out that you're probably not,
No.
52 plus, right? Plus, like, some sort of, what is our average, sort of C-suite age, right?
Yes.
So that gives us a little bit of mystery, to work with. But if there's more, I think, that you wanted to share there.
I think so. Absolutely. You and I are talking before we clicked record, and I love the like behind the scenes when we're able to like take down. Is that the fourth wall? Whatever, right? Where you have to actually go behind
Exactly.
the scenes, and you asked me, hey, this is kind of one of those shows. What's important to you? And I don't get asked that enough of like what's really important to you. And the thing that is most important to me as it relates to when people look at the stage of status or success that I am at right now is helping provide a different level of transparency on how I arrived here. Because I think typically we put this box or we have this formula, and it's go to grad school, go to and I did some of these things, mind you, mind you.
Right.
But it's very linear. It's very structured.
We won't
It's
hold it against you. At least not next time. Who knows?
but it's doing multiple things at once, right? It's not just this linear stair step. It's this then that, and if this then that. There's so many more layers of complexity that I specifically have been able to leverage, and I've had a lot of setbacks. I've taken some very, very, very big risks, and it's put me back, pretty far. But then I've learned and adapted to that. And I think the one thing that I think is really important to come from me is there's no linear journey. There's no linear journey. It's all about your ability to know yourself very, very well, know your unique skill set. And then you've heard me say this a lot. I have a lot of isms, DK isms, but it's about iterative feedback. It's about taking big risks, doubting yourself, failing, learning from that data, and then making exponential steps forward. And I think it's really important that we talk about that more, because there is I hate the hustle culture thing. I think that you can work very smart and end up in much better results than wake up at 3 a.m. and grind to 10 p.m. It's like, yeah, you're going to be exhausted doing that, mind you, and you're not going to make good decisions. And so how do you make great decisions? You start to become more comfortable with who you are, and you're comfortable with like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not comfortable doing that. Or I want to take that risk. I want to do this thing. And you learn to trust yourself more. And then when you look back and you go, oh, wait, actually, there's a thread all the way through that nonlinear journey, and that's me and the progress and the improvement that I've made on that nonlinear journey. I never imagined this is where I would be. I actually tried to get out of the contact center space a bunch of times, and somehow it keeps pulling me back in. But it's me just taking a test. Yeah.
Yeah. You seem to enjoy what you do though now, and that at least you present that way, and that seems like an important part of the journey, right? Is like, and you just articulated that right, like you try to get out. Perhaps something pulls you in. Perhaps it's you that pulls you back in. Maybe there's aspects of what you do that you really enjoy, and that's maybe part of that discovery process of who you are. Maybe not just, oh, I'm good at this, or I like the innovative aspect of it, and what is probably, at least perceptively, is in a space that innovates a lot. But maybe there's other elements that you really enjoy, and you have to take those knocks and maybe the upside too to discover that.
Yeah.
There might be days I don't want to get up and do this, but there's enough of the good ones to want to continue regardless.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, you picked up on something that I didn't articulate, and this is all new for me in terms of being 100% transparent on my nonlinear journey, because I used to just package it up, and I'd do the here's for public consumption narrative, right? Like, I'm media trained. I've been through a handful of acquisitions, and we do a really good job of synthesizing things that are very complex, and that's what the world does. Like, how do we make this digestible? And I'm natively just not a digestible person, right? I'm sure you can pick that up from just having a few moments of conversation with me. Is there's tangents, and there's a little bit of this. There's some distraction here. You could tell that I talk with my hands a lot and things like that. Right? Like, there's a lot of intersections to my identity that I did not necessarily have a lot of acceptance for, which is really funny, because here I am talking about you needing to trust yourself and you needing to believe. Like, this is like version 3 of me leaning into this. And there's one component that I really want to draw on, is there is this sense of identity that is in me in the contact center, because in college, I paid for college myself. I was one of those individuals, and contact center was one of my first jobs, and I engaged with Aspect software. And so I think that's maybe a part of what the pull back to me is. It's like, wow, I get to do this. I never imagined I would want to do this, but I get to do this, and that has been also one consistent thread through my career as well. So yeah, it's hard. It is really, 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 really hard to take a company that has been basically flat for the last 5 years and inject new life into it. That's state change. State change is always difficult, because it means you're pruning some things off, you're investing into some areas that are big risks and they're bets, and so they're hard. And you have, our average tenure here when I came in was 16 years. So you have a lot of organizational debt. You have a lot of resistance. I have a funny story about our engineering leader. I remember a call that we were on very early on, and he goes, "This guy is an idiot." And I said, "Kevin, one day I'm going to hug you." and we're going to be best friends. And here we are last night. We were talking for 2.5 hours about the future, and he's been here for 27 years. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, I guess I'm honored that I get to do this, and it's a lot of fun. And I wake up very excited to do what I get to do, even though this has been some of the hardest days of my career. I want to quit constantly.
Don't we? Don't we all? One way or another. And just to get down to, there's a lot of like sort of points you brought up there, right, and tenets, and I think that there's a lot for people to think about and even unpack further. We could do whole podcasts, episodes, and shows on some of the at least three or four of the themes that you assembled there. But I think certainly there's a consistent one, and that's the authenticity that you described yourself in this sort of like 3.0, Darryl Kelly. I think people appreciate that. I think the underpinning reason though is value. Like when people recognize and know that you're being authentic, they, even though you can't see them, they let their guard down,
Yeah.
right? And they might learn a little bit more incrementally or listen a little more keenly, or maybe be more likely to apply something because they feel like you've been authentic rather than just dismiss something you said, or also just see it as like, oh, he's different, he's a corporate type, that's not me, right? And that relationship is really, really important, for probably everyone. So there's
Thank
so
you for
much more
that.
yeah, and certainly, Darryl, there's so much more we can go into. I will say, go into that. I will say also, media has changed a little bit too. There is a little more authenticity, or a lot, somewhere in there,
Hmm.
and so that's probably a nice tailwind actually for your viewpoint, on that. There are a lot of other people in media. I am one. I would probably encourage it at this
Yeah.
point. When maybe 10 years ago, I might have said, Darryl 1.0 was just fine. Just fine. So sometimes it's what you use at a certain time, or
Yeah.
period. But I'm glad that we're here. I'm
Me
glad we're
too.
at that where you can be frank, about these specific things. Well, really lovely, having you on the show, and tuning in. For everyone listening, you can reach out to Darryl. Darryl, if you could share some of your social, we'll make it as easy as possible and authentic as possible.
Yeah.
Favorite way for people to reach you, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram, or just shoot you an email. Feel free to drop it here.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. That's where my professional identity lives. You're going to hear words from me and also words from my team through me. I don't want to be inauthentic and say that every single thing that you're consuming on LinkedIn is from me. There's a 80% is from me, and some of it is from my team that is through my voice and through my filter. If you want me unfiltered, darrylkelly.com. I'm exploring doing a lot more writing, which is very uncomfortable for me. So if you're going to go on there, judge, and then send me an email with what you didn't like, and I may listen to it, I may not. Either way, I'm going to keep pursuing it. I'm working on writing a essays section that I'm calling nuances. Um, I didn't realize how terrible of a writer I was until I, started trying to work on long form. And I think I've done a lot of good short form writing. And so it's been fun to challenge myself there. So that's my space. If you want my space, that's funny. That is the space online. If you want unfiltered DK, darrylkelly.com. Thanks so much for having me
Sounds
on your
like,
show.
oh yeah, certainly, Darryl, and so, as long as comments are open, if they're not, I haven't checked, but let it rip. Some really, really top books have come along that way of writing essays. I will say this,
Mhm.
writing some nonfiction, some fiction, and people just commenting away and say, hey, you should probably change this, and crowdsource that. It's like
Yes.
free consulting.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, hopefully you can drive some people your way, and they can at least check out, what's inside your head that you've poured onto paper, and let them be the judge.
Yeah.
Whether you're a good writer or a good not, as long as the communication gets through. I think that's the key part of it. But again, lovely to have you, Darryl. Thanks again, and for everyone listening and watching. Until next time, this is Grit Daily Startup Show. You'll hear from us again.
Thanks for having me. See everyone. Ciao.